All right, thanks everyone for being here. I'm Samantha Montier. I'm the director of the Office of Student Services for the Social Work Department at MSU Denver. I am super pleased to just be wildly over here admitting people into our room to hear this faculty panel discussion today. So we're all here just to learn about the different pathways within social work, and in particular, the microclinical pathway. And we are joined by three tremendous experts from our department. And so I will let them introduce themselves, and then we'll probably just kick it off on what it means to be a clinical social worker, to do that micro work. But if y'all have questions, feel free to pop them in the chat and we'll get them answered. So Dr. Drake, you're right up. So I'll start off with you.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Matt Drake, and I am a faculty member here at MSU Denver. I've been a full-time faculty member for about 7 years. Before that, I was a clinical social worker, still am. I've been a licensed clinical social worker for 20 plus years now. And I think it's one of the greatest professions that you could do with your life. Always opportunities for growth. So I'm excited that you all are here and happy to answer any questions that may come up.
Dr. Corvino.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here today. My name is Perry Corvino. I am a PhD and an LCSW and an LAC. That means licensed clinical social worker and licensed addiction counselor, which means I have some specialized training in working with folks who are experiencing problematic substance use. I have worked in various settings, including residential treatment, community mental health, a jail-based program, private practice, outpatient, like all over the place. Clinical supervision is something else that's really important to me in my social work, as well as leadership. And these days I'm enjoying research, which is bananas, but here we are in these new days. So thanks for being here, and I look forward to your questions.
Dr. Starr.
Hey, my name's Eileen Starr, and I might be fading in and out because of some issues I'm having with connection. So I have been with MSU Denver for, I can't believe it, 6 years. I am in the MSW department. I teach lead for the DSM and crisis intervention. My specialty area is school-age youth through young adults and family therapy. Did I miss anything, Sam? Because it's cutting in and out.
And we're hearing you great.
Good.
Yeah, you sound pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. I'm sitting in my car with the fake background.
Well, someone maybe with a little better connectivity, if you'd like to kick us off with, with a little overview of what y'all do, what it looks like to pursue that, starting keeping in mind that we have undeclared social work students, so pre-social work students, through our bachelor students and master students, so quite an audience, and then those who are just prospective to those programs as well. So cast a wide net. Can't wait to hear from y'all.
Yeah, Sam, real fast, if you're facilitating this, can you kick off Eileen's Meet Geek? I got it off of my mail, but for some reason I haven't been able to get it off my Zoom. Thank you. Do you want me to go first, since I don't know how long my hotspot's going to hold up? So if anybody told me 10 years ago I'd have these fancy initials behind my name 1,700 miles away from my home state, I would say that you were crazy. I started out as a pre-veterinary science major. I ended up getting a bachelor's degree in outdoor education, master's degree in social work, because I love working with kids, especially kids who give regular people a hard time. I was challenged by them. And ended up being a community-based social worker most of my career on the East Coast in Delaware and Maryland, and running a program to bring therapy into the schools because kids were losing so much time from academic instruction time, and then fairly marginalized because of their issues and not being able to connect to peers and things like that. And, you know, I think it's an amazing profession. And I came about it much like a mountain road that I live off of, very back and forth and unexpected. So you know, your journey is part of the process, and trying to get a PhD when I didn't think I deserved or had the ability is more about stubbornness and stick-to-itiveness and believing in yourself and believing in what you want to do. And I wanted to teach because I would have interns who were brilliant. They knew verse of line and theory and better than I could even tell you and articulate right now, but they were terrified to work with the kids I worked with. And I'm like, I can teach that. Because by the time the end of their internship was over, I hired a lot of them for the school-based mental health program. And, you know, you're scared of what you don't know, especially if you're not out and you're with a homogenous group a lot of the times. And they adored those kids as much as I did by the time they were ready to graduate. And I feel like I can bring that to the classroom and teach my students things that aren't necessarily in the book, but we abide by the scholarly evidence-based practices and theory and knowledge and how to apply it in a common sense way, and not be afraid to deal with issues of class and race, and being able to talk about it by addressing our own stuff, but also being able to connect with people who may be in a different population, ethnic group than ours. I know my families that I worked with, there was primarily marginalized populations. They taught me so much. And I believe that we have a lot to learn and how to connect to clients and not have to run to your textbook every time, you know. So that's my deal, is I want you to leave my classes with a little bit more knowledge and some pennies in your pocket to pull out when you use, and things that aren't necessarily in the book, but also respecting the theory and respecting the scholarship aspect of our degree.
I guess I can jump in now. So my journey starts in my undergraduate. I was a sociology major and really enjoyed these big grand theories of looking at communities and groups of people, and loved the work. I loved to write, and minored in communications. I knew that I wanted to be, as I got closer to graduating with my bachelor's degree, I knew I wanted to be a couples therapist. I just didn't know how to get there. And so I started asking around different people within my university that I was familiar with. So I taught to the Department of Psychology. I taught to our marriage and family program. And I also taught to our sociology department. And they all recommended social work. And I was I didn't really know what social work was at that moment, despite the fact that I walked by the social work department every day for 2 years, which social workers, we have a marketing problem. We need to fix that. But we can talk about that when we're in class sometime. Anyway, so I took their advice. I decided that I was going to go into social work. I applied I was in Utah at the time. I applied to the University of Utah. And I thought, I'm going to get in. This is going to be great. My resume looked good. Grades looked good. And I got denied my first year applying. And it was a little bit of an ego blow. I didn't know why. So I made an appointment, said, hey, what do I need to do to get here? And they said, go get some experience. You'll be great once you do that. So I landed this job in an outpatient program. I was sort of doing therapy without knowing what I was doing. I'm sure some of you may relate to that. and reapplied the next year, and I got in. And that experience was a life changer for me. Just learning, how to do this work, how to be a therapist. And it also incorporated those ideas of sociology that I loved. Once I graduated, I remained friends with a lot of those people that I developed relationships with in graduate school. And I continued in the outpatient program where I was working. I took on the intensive outpatient program director role at that time, working with youth, ages like 10 to 18 with a lot of substance use, gang issues, just within the system. And I learned a tremendous amount at that moment in my life. I then transferred up to the University of Utah to work in their neuropsych institute, and really worked in the intensive residential side of it, research, as it was attached to the University of Utah. It was a pretty progressive treatment facility, so I was able to, learn a lot, think quick, do a lot of cool things. And then we decided it was time to get out of Utah. We came to Colorado and continued to work with youth a little bit older, 18 to 24 at that point, with substance use issues as well. Dual diagnosis, that kind of thing that you'll learn more about once you get into the program. And then I decided to go into start my own practice, and I've been doing that ever since. And now I specialize mostly working with adults, do a lot of couples work, a lot of family work as well. And, when I was in graduate school, I had an awesome professor who I just loved. She was my clinical professor. And I said, one day I'm going to go back to school so I could be like her. And I did that. When my daughter, my oldest child was 2 years old, I decided to go back and get my PhD, and then came on board and love what I do here at Metro State University of Denver. I think it's a fantastic institution, great faculty, have a great program. I think you'll be tremendously satisfied if you choose to come with us. I specialize in teaching the clinical side of social work, so advanced practice, a little bit of general practice, family and couples work. And just really, one of the greatest things about this work is the opportunity to constantly look in the mirror and see yourself and to improve. So if you're looking for that sort of, reward in life, how to get better, how to be a better person, how to be kind and compassionate, you're in the right place. So I really encourage you to take a leap of faith if you're kind of sitting on the fence, and go for it, take that leap. So that's my background.
My journey feels similar to the two of you in many ways. I was not a thriver in school. Like Eileen, I'm like, how did I get a PhD? Me? Because school wasn't easy for me. I definitely jumped between majors in my undergrad career, and it took me 6 years to finish my bachelor's degree. Maybe some folks here can relate. Some of us it takes us a little bit longer to get there. But I did eventually find my way to psychology, and that's what my bachelor's degree was finally in. And I that was in New York, and then I went to Loyola University in Chicago for my master's degree. Same with Matt, I didn't really know what social work was, but there was a degree program that was both the MSW and a master's in women's and gender studies, and that was very much something that was important to me, still is, and that intersectionality really mattered to me between those two things. After I finished that program, I went into residential settings, did some jail-based work, case management, private practice, supervision, and the people that I worked with had pretty severe experiences of oppression, trauma, and addiction coinciding. And through working with them, I developed my practices that are key to even my teaching, and those are trauma-informed care, harm reduction, anti-oppressive practice, and relational therapy. And I did that for about 6 years, and then I started my PhD program, and I was teaching actively here at MSU. Became full-time here a few years back. Now I'm just teaching full-time, but very small private practice. I think all of us here might have a little bit of a private practice on the side, where I mainly provide supervision and consultation to other social workers and counselors and addiction counselors. I especially love working with students who are trans and non-binary and otherwise in the wonderful constellation of queerness. I love working with neurodivergent students and just anyone who wants to just talk about this stuff all the time and has social justice close to their heart. And now here I am, pretty cool, sitting here in front of you all today. Thanks.
Thank you. If folks in the audience have questions, I encourage you to just drop them in the chat, and I'll be sure that our faculty see them and respond. Otherwise, I'm just thinking, so from my perspective, I was really kind of interested in what work looks like in jails. Like what kind of, how did you really get into that, and what kind of work can you do in that space? Because I think it's maybe a little off the beaten track.
Yeah, although there's just an email that the DOS, the Department of Corrections here in Colorado, is hiring social workers at like 70 grand a year. Whoa. Yeah. I mean, that's not enough money for that type of work, honestly. I was working for an agency that had a grant called the Second Chance grant and the RISE grant. So two different grants, but the RISE grant provided us, this nonprofit organization, access to Denver County Jail, where we were on, so Denver County Jail is separated by binary gender, just the women's side and the men's side. And we were contracted into both sides. I happened to be on the women's side, and I was running groups for these people were specifically placed in this housing unit because they had experienced trauma and addiction, and then said, I would like treatment while I'm here in jail. So I ran 3-hour groups because they literally just gave us 3 hours to do what we needed to do. So ran these marathon groups, 3 hours a day, 3 days a week. And then I was also providing a lot of case management there, so that when these folks left the jail, they had us to provide them resources and to help them integrate back in and find housing, which is just nearly impossible for folks who have experienced incarceration, especially if they have felonies and depending on their charge. I'm not going to get on my soapbox. So it was really, really difficult case management work. And being in a jail, I only lasted a year going into the jail because it really wears on you. So I think it's important for us to develop our self-awareness so that we can be really in tune with when we're done, when we're done with a certain setting. So yeah, there are agencies out there that do contract with the jails and the Department of Corrections, which is prison and jail are different. But those have to be like awarded, and it's the whole messy business. So, and of course you could be employed by the jail or the prison itself. And that being in the setting was harder than, way harder than any of the actual like therapy that I was providing. The setting was the hard part. So yeah, I'm happy to answer more questions about that stuff, but that's just the basics of it.
Thank you. So it looks like we do have a question in the chat. So if someone is just not sure of their pathway yet, can they make it to that clinical pathway later on? Where might that show up in your curriculum?
I can jump in with this one. I think one of the greatest things about social work is its strength and weakness, but we're broad enough where we can do a lot of things. So you're never really fully boxed in. Starting with generalist practice will give you a good foundation of different theories of both, the clinical sort of work of social work, moving into policy and more macro ideas as well, groups, leadership. So there's opportunities in that first year to sort of get a feel for where you want to land. And then moving into the second year, you'll start to specialize a little bit more in what you feel is most of, what's really ringing true for you. And I think by that time, you'll have a good idea of what that is. That's even if you were 10 years outside of this, you got your MSW 10 years down the road, you could still do it. And there's, we'll have these conversations a lot with you all as you're moving through the program, but I don't want you to feel like you're ever really boxed in this profession. There's always opportunity. There's opportunity for growth. It's a great, I think a lot of social workers, people that tend to move into social work tend to be a little bit restless anyway, a little bit rebellious. This is perfect for you all because you can find your niche and you can fit into it. And then, maybe 3 weeks later, you want to do something else, more power to you, you can. And I don't know if Perry and Eileen would back me up on that, but that's how I feel.
Awesome. So we have some additional questions. So Jasmine asked, after you graduated with your MSW, what did supervision look like for you all to get your LCSW? Specifically, how many hours did you complete? Ooh, saucy one. How much did you have to pay?
I can field that one. Just say there is a question above that one, just in case. Yeah. So the state of Colorado sets those requirements. Gosh, I'll plop a website in there in a few minutes. But it's the DORA website, not Dora the Explorer can come up, but if you do DORA social work, you'll get there faster. So what's required in the state of Colorado is 96 hours of supervision by an LCSW in no less than 2 years. There's also a amount of clinical hours requirement, 3,360, I think it is, which is basically 2 years of 40-hour-a-week full-time work. And how much you pay for supervision depends on depends on a couple things. Some organizations will have an LCSW on staff, so you get free supervision. Pretty cool. Some organizations don't have an LCSW on staff, so you need to seek an outside supervisor. Outside supervisors, their rates vary, but they're usually comparable to private practice rates. So they can be upwards of over $100 per session, and you need 96 of those sessions. So it can be a lot of money. So it's really, if you can find an organization that has an LCSW on staff, that's awesome. Personally, as Matt was just saying, I definitely have a rebellious streak in me, and I always sought outside supervision because I wasn't getting what I needed from my organization's supervision. So I always paid like once a month out of pocket to get supervision that aligned with my social work a little bit more.
Okay. What is the best way to gain experience before entering the master's program with an undergrad degree not related to social work? Ooh, that's a good one.
I can jump in there since I did that. And it's been a long time. It's been a long time since I was in that space, but I apply to everything. Anything and everything is my recommendation. I'm a firm believer that if you can do some difficult work early on, it's going to help shape you into a better social worker later. So some of the jobs that you may take, you may feel like, wow, this is really difficult. You may be working frontline in residential treatment facilities, which is very difficult work. We all know that, but it will help you grow in a way that will be useful as you're moving through the MSW program, and then definitely useful down the road. You'll make better decisions in your practice. You'll know how to deal with crisis because you've had that experience. And then to Perry's point as well, make sure you know who's supervising you in these positions, because your supervisors are extremely important in your growth and development. And to Perry's point as well, make sure that that aligns with your values, because that will make a big difference about how you feel about the work. because it is so difficult. You want people that are supportive and that can lift you up in those moments and not tear you down. And the Colorado nonprofit website's a great place to start as well for jobs.
I wish there was like the 100 thing that you could put across your, but you can only have like smiley faces there. But that's what I'm saying to Matt. 100.
So I'm sorry, I'm looking through the chat. There's a lot of really good questions, and I wonder if we can maybe bucket them or how you all feel about answering some of these. Got a couple of folks who have been in the field for a while. One who's talking about, how to better advocate for better pay, which I think is something relevant to the field. But I'm not so sure. I mean, if we could all solve that, we'd all solve that. So that's something to think about. And then another one here just about how to continue kind of gaining experience. And I'll let you tackle that, and I'll come back with the next one. Just kind of advocating for yourself in the field. You're trying to get experience, but you're told you need experience. I don't know if that's something maybe too specific for talking about here. Yeah, a little bit. But we'll reach out to them afterwards.
Sorry, I was shaking my head.
Oh,
sorry, no. Yeah, I think we can address that here, but I'm happy to.
okay, go ahead. Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah, we got time. Let's do it. That's a great question.
I was just gonna say, now I forgot what the question was because I opened up a window to get the DORA website. Can you say it again?
Advocating for yourself, both for your experience, but then also pay wise,
This is why, so you're in the micro social work meeting here right now. This is why meso and macro social work matter so much, and why I don't think any of us exist as solely micro practitioners. Like, the macro matters so much. I don't know, I feel like it just depends so much on the organization. Like, I don't have an answer for this. I think it's important, like Matt was saying, like, who is advocating for you? And a lot of the time it's your supervisor. What are their beliefs about it? How invested are they in your professional development and your progress through this career? What is the organization's investment in you? How can you ask those questions during a job interview? And I know you don't always get like the most accurate answers during a job interview, right? They're kind of making it super lovely to be at their to be in their employment. But we can usually find out pretty quickly. I think there are times when advocacy is useful and when we are up against a barrier that we cannot move on our own. And having our, again, self-awareness be attuned to when are we fighting a battle that, I'm making it violent, when are we up against institutionalized and oppressive systems that are not going to budge without like strength in numbers. So I advocate for myself as much as I can, because the worst thing that's going to happen is the person says no. And well, I guess that's maybe not always the worst thing, depending on who you are and how you show up and your intersectionality and all those things. But finding people to advocate with strength in numbers, I think, can be really helpful. Kind of get rambling.
Yeah, I want to add as well that I think that it's changing. I think that there is some movement in a direction that's positive as far as financial, our incomes being more sustainable. And I think one of the hard parts for us in general as social workers is we would do this for free. This is just part of who we are. It's in our blood. And sometimes it feels strange to take money for something that we would do for free, right? Like, so I think that there's a real sort of wrestle that we do in our own minds on how to deal with this. But I do feel like we're making progress, and each sort of new generation of student, graduates that are coming through is just another level of new social work, new ideas that are going out into the community that are changing it for the better. So I think we're in a good place right now.
Couple questions in here that kind of hit on self-care as a clinician. One in particular, Perry, is, your experience with knowing when you're done in a setting. Was something called out, but then there's just a couple questions of how do you balance your own self-care in this space, which is pretty important.
I'm responding to a chat too, so yeah. Just to say out loud, April, I am currently responding to your chat, so I will press send in a little bit. If you all are familiar with the experience of burnout or compassion fatigue or secondary trauma, these are all things that we as social workers and people across helping professions experience when they've been exposed to so much stress and trauma in their workplace that it mirrors post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms, and we can be really escalated and dysregulated. But it can also be like way more subtle than that. Like you wake up in the morning and you're like, I don't want to get out of bed. There's no way I can get out of bed right now. I don't want to go to supervision. I'm going to say I'm sick. I'm going to cancel this client meeting because I just can't. And I think what can be really useful, and I'd love to hear what Eileen and Matt have to say too. It's been really useful for me to have people around me who are really honest with me and can be like, I think something's up. Like, you don't seem okay. Like, what's going on? And like they have the strength to say that to me, and those people are really important in my life. It can be sometimes hard to find those people. But sometimes a supervisor might be that person, or it doesn't even have to be another social worker. We don't have to be talking about social work at all, but someone who knows you and can be like, hey, I think something's wrong. Like, what's going on? So burnout can be a sign, those little subtle pieces of like not wanting to show up and disengaging and like you're not yourself anymore. It shows up differently for everybody. So I'm curious, Matt and Eileen, what that's been like for you.
I can jump in just quickly here. I think that what will help you is as you further your education and learn more about human behavior and developmental theory and different ways, different modalities to treat individuals, that will help ground you in a way that maybe you're feeling like you're floating around right now and you're all over the place. And I have found that the more I believe in the work that I do and the theories that I'm implementing, I just feel better about the work, and things just sort of start to make sense. And my levels of compassion fatigue and maybe burnout seem to drop. And you've got great faculty here, great clinical faculty here that will help you really learn these theories, these ideas. That you'll gain a tremendous skill set that I think will help you in feeling like you can kind of calm the waters there. And then it's such a subjective question because we all do it differently. Some have the ability to let things go easier than others. And we'll talk a lot about this as you're moving through the program to really help you find ways that you can be successful, that you'll be happy in this work, and that your clients will be happy that you're working with. And I think that's really, if you can do that, that's great, right? That's what we want. So, hey, Eileen, what do you have to say?
With regard to supervision, you want someone. I always encourage people to not have a different clinical supervisor than someone who signs the timesheet, so to speak, and deals with personnel stuff. You want somebody that has a balance with a good working relationship and will tell you what you need to hear in a way that is supportive and nurturing, knowing that you're new and it is a journey, and someone you trust. So when you really do fall flat on your face, it'll be a learning opportunity versus a finger wagging, if that makes sense.
Thank you. So a little bit of shift in conversation. We've got at least one question, a couple of questions in here about, when you're in the academics of it, let's say undergrad or grad, from your faculty perspective to students, how do you talk with folks about balancing your coursework and your field placement and all those things, and the kind of time commitment they should expect, especially as we have some folks who sound like they may be considering the MSW degree, but if anybody can speak to the undergrad life, that's also helpful. Thank you.
I can jump in here because I will need to jump off in a few minutes, a little bit early, so I apologize for that for you all. But it does take some work. It takes some work and some discipline for sure. And developing a sort of system that works for you, getting everything out. How I work is I like to see it I'm like old school. It has to be on a piece of paper for me to sort of see how this is going to progress. But what was some of the best advice that I ever got when I was working on my PhD is, if I have time, what can I do now? And do it, right? And do it when you have the time, because I also believe that it's extremely important to still have a life, to still have relationships that you're close with. I don't really like this idea of like, oh, see you in 2 years. I'm not a believer in that. I'm a believer in you maintain your relationships, strong relationships with people, and really enjoy it, enjoy the journey. It's not a race. Take your time with it, really be in the moment as much as you can. And things start to just sort of fall into place at that point. You'll be learning about things you love, learning about things you want to implement. So it doesn't, at least for me, it didn't feel like a chore. It felt like something like I just want more and more. So it was more about like, when can I stop? And, then is this too much kind of a thing? If that makes sense. But you'll get through it. You'll get through it. Most everybody does. You just have to do
it. I think there's one thing I want to piggyback off of what Matt said is when I was in my graduate program, I made a lot of good friends and we got each other's emails and stuff. And few years out, they are all amazing. Some are still in the field directly, some are supervisors, some are professors, but they all had specialty areas. And I have referred a lot of my clients to my former classmates who are in certain specialty areas. So that networking in graduate school is so incredibly important. So I tell all my classes to make sure you get people's personal email addresses and what they're, just to keep in touch and just to have, your cohort. But good friends of mine have done some amazing work, both in academia and in the field, and their specialty areas are, and it's a really great, diverse group of people. So I trust them. So I don't hesitate to refer a client out if I feel like they need more specialized treatment. And that's important to make those connections in grad school.
Thank you. Quite helpful. And if folks didn't see, Dr. Corvino did respond to some other questions in here, in particular about the Access Center and being neurodivergent in the program and whatnot. I think those are great questions to ask. Those resources are what you deserve to have an equitable experience in college. So please take advantage of them. Work with your advisors if you feel like you're getting lost in those processes. Yeah.
Can I chime in for a second?
Please.
So I'm going to put in the chat the DORA webpage for people who are curious about what the requirements to become an LCSW, including supervision, are. You're going to want to look at the stuff under original license by examination, and then there are a few forms toward the bottom of the page that will have more information on them. And it's all very confusing. So if you're confused, you're doing it right.
Well, if anybody has any further questions, we're going to sit here in an uncomfortable, like 30 seconds of silence or so, and see if anybody has any further questions. I did put the link one more time at the bottom of the chat so you can see it for the check-in. That way we can follow up with folks, and you can follow up with us as you need to. So, does any parting thoughts from our faculty panel? Don't mean to put you on the spot, Matt. I know you need to dash.
Yeah, I'm gonna say thank you for being here. We're more than happy to answer any of your questions. You can find our emails on the website. Feel free to reach out. We can help you out on your journey through this social work process, and best of luck to you all. And I'm going to jump off, so take care.
Yeah, Jordan, my apologies. I couldn't tell if we had answered it or not. Let me go ahead and, do you want to repeat it, Perry, before you answer? You look like you were willing to take it on.
Yeah.
Cool.
So how do you balance working in systems that can be harmful, right? This one, while empowering the individuals in that system, how does advocacy at the macro level come in? I understand we need to be working, on these systems. It's not, oh my gosh, criticize all you need to. Absolutely. So again, I feel like it's another like personal approach type of thing. This is where I think a lot of the ways that we practice are very grassroots in a sense, where it's this bottom up change. So like when I was in Denver County Jail, talk about a harmful, oppressive system. I feel like that's one of the worst culprits. With the way that I practiced my social work, really shaped how the people in that housing unit viewed me and our time together. And there were, again, I was there for over years, and people usually cycle out within a month out of jail. So that's a lot of different people that I came into contact with over 12 months. And multiple people through that process said, this place sucks, but when you walk in, I feel a little bit better. And that's harm reduction. Like if I can just take like the smallest piece of this awful place and just provide the smallest amount of relief, it feels really important to me. I wish that wasn't the case at all, and this is where we're meeting, but here we are in this incarceration system. So harm reduction to me is key. I know harm reduction can also oftentimes be only talked about in regards to addiction, and it's just simply not. It's everywhere. We wear seatbelts when we get in a car. They are not going to stop us from being harmed in a car accident, but they reduce harm. We wore masks during COVID. It didn't stop us from getting COVID, but it reduced the harm. And that applies to our relationships. It applies to the way that we hold ourselves and the way we interact with the world. So I'm very much a harm reductionist, and I'm looking for those little moments of relief. And while I'm in those systems, I am actively criticizing them. You have your own style, and I'll have mine, but that's just the way I've gone about it. There have been times when criticizing the system that I was in was necessary to like keep going. One of the one that's popping in my head right now is like working with Medicaid. Medicaid requires so much paperwork, and I hate every minute of that paperwork. And it is the way that people get financial support to access treatment, right? It's both. It's not an either or situation. But I actively criticized those requirements while I was in that workplace, and that helped us like lessen burnout and like feel better that we were like, yeah, this blows, and look at all of these amazing resources that these people now have access to. I'm not sure if that's really answering the question. This is like what's coming to mind as I see your question. Please let me know.
They report it was incredibly helpful.
Oh, I see. Okay, good.
Yes, I thought so. I mean, based on my interpretation of the question, I think so. That's really difficult, like you say, Medicare and those kinds of things. But if that's the system which we're in to get folks resources or whatever, that's a sticky wicket.
Yeah. sorry, I'm just seeing another, oh, where'd it go? Oh, something about, oh, okay. It looks like, oh, Arlie, your question got answered by Sam, but in the next comment box. I was just going to find the link and then I just happened to see yours. So it's just in a different place, but it's the right information.
Thank you. Yeah, cool. Okay. All right.
Sorry, because stuff is like responding, like the chat's moving around, so it's also a little bit dizzying.
It
but I'm
is
getting-
indeed. Okay. Thank you both. Thanks so much. Thanks to everyone for being here. This was really great. I hope we got you the answers you need. I'm gonna drop one last very general email in the chat so that if you just had questions about the program, you want to follow up with someone and you're not sure how to get connected, send us a note and we'll facilitate getting you linked up or getting your questions answered. All right. Well, thanks again to everyone. I'm going to go ahead and close this out. Have a great afternoon. Thank you.